I had been with Sophia for 7 years. She said that honest guys simply don't understand romance. Then she turned around and threw herself into the arms of a young male college student, chasing the exciting life she had always dreamed of. This time, I didn't try to persuade her to stay. I threw away the diamond ring I bought for her, burned the wedding dress I chose for her, and boarded a plane late at night, leaving New York. Her girlfriends made bets one after another, wondering how soon I would lower my head and beg for peace. Sophia laughed so hard that she was shaking, and said, "Within one day, that dog-like admirer will come back and beg me." But day after day, I was still nowhere to be found. She could no longer sit still. So she dialed my phone. "James, come back when you've had enough fun." A shy female voice interrupted her. "Sophia, apologize sooner, or he'll be snatched away." Sophia tightly gripped the phone, her voice trembling as she said, "Who are you? Tell James to answer the phone." Olivia lowered her head and kissed me, then continued, "James can't answer right now. He needs to rest. If you have something important, wait until I kiss him awake." Start of the main text. If you like it, remember to subscribe. In the 7th year of being with Sophia, I bought a diamond ring and the wedding dress she liked. Mustered up the courage to propose to her. But unfortunately, I was a few minutes late for the party that day. Just in time to hear her chatting with her girlfriends. You know, James. He doesn't understand romance or charm. Being with him, everything has become incredibly boring. There's no surprise or excitement at all. Every day is just a dull routine. Sophia took a sip of red wine, shook her head and continued. Enduring like this for 7 years. Who wouldn't get bored? Those people echoed. That's right. The most important thing in life is enjoyment and freedom. If you only know about the 3.1-line life of daily necessities, such a man is not worth it. If I were you, I couldn't even last a year. No matter how handsome such a man is, it's useless. When you're feeling bad, he just gives a silly smile and tells you to drink more hot water. How disappointing. He can't even provide any emotional value. But James is really handsome. Last time when Sophia had a birthday, he wore a full set of black suit. He was even more handsome than male celebrities in the entertainment industry. To be honest, Sophia, you liked him so much back then. Are you really willing to give him up now? Sophia replied without hesitation. Sisters, I've been through this. Never give your heart to a man completely. Don't take men too seriously either. Otherwise, you'll be controlled by them sooner or later. You have to keep them on the hook to always be in the dominant position. The girlfriend immediately changed her tone and said, "Then if I pursue James, you won't mind, right?" Sophia took an unnatural sip of wine, glanced at her with a barely noticeable look, and slowly said, "If you like him, go ahead. Who would care about a dog-like admirer?" The person next to her sneered at her. "Aren't you ashamed? Have some sense of boundaries. What do you see in him? Do you like his not taking a bath?" There was a burst of laughter in the room. That night, I didn't enter the box. I found an excuse and went home first. Sophia didn't ask a single extra word, and hung up the phone. Probably that night, my once passionate heart completely died out. Not long after, it spread like wildfire in the circle that a sophomore boy was chasing Sophia at a friend's party. Sophia brought him along directly. As soon as they entered the door, everyone fell silent. Several friends who were on good terms looked at me with some concern. I smiled and asked, "Why aren't you talking? What are you looking at me for?" Sophia sat down, arm in arm with the boy. Looking satisfied, she said, "James, let's have a good talk today. Go ahead, I'm listening. Over the years, we've been on again off again. It's really boring. Our feelings have long faded." I tightly clenched my hand, the ring hidden in my palm digging deeply into my skin. But I seemed to feel no pain. Sophia held the boy's hand, her eyes full of love. I nodded and said, "Yes. I understand." She smiled brightly and continued, "Let's just be friends from now on." I chuckled, stood up, and said, "No need. Since we've broken up, let's make it clear, so as not to cause misunderstandings." Sophia slightly raised her eyebrows in surprise. It took a while for her to say, "Yes. You're right." I waved my hand to say goodbye to them. "You guys continue the party." I'll go back first. I walked out of the room. When closing the door casually, I heard someone ask, "How long do you think James can hold on this time?" 2 days. This time he seems really angry. Then I bet 5 days. Sophia glanced at the door that wasn't completely closed. Laughed contemptuously, her voice extra loud and unrestrained. She said, "Within 1 day, that dog-like admirer will be back." Hasn't it always been like this for so many years? The people sitting inside echoed. That's right. How could James leave you? Everyone knows he's crazy about you. I smiled self-mockingly. Quickly walked towards the elevator and returned to the apartment. I took out the wedding dress she had long liked. And burned it. I simply burned it. The flames of the gas stove flickered with blue-orange fire. The tongues of fire greedily licked the edge of the wedding dress. It howled, curled up, turned black, emitting a nauseating smell. I closed my eyes. The flames seemed to turn into dancing little people. Jumping merrily. They danced, mocking my life heartily. The hopes of the past had become the ashes of today. The treasures of the old days were now just a mass of putrid air, rolling into my nostrils. Unbearable. I turned off the stove. The ashes scattered on the stove. A faint red light flickered on them, like fragments of past memories saying goodbye to me. I shook my head and laughed bitterly. After all, the wedding dress wasn't completely burned. I shook my clothes, laid the remains neatly on the bed we used to share. Before leaving, I thought about it. Still left her a note. She could dispose of the house and everything in it as she pleased. No need to ask me. I booked a flight ticket for the early morning. Left New York and returned to that familiar city. When my brother heard the news, he arranged a party in the evening. Those who came were all former classmates and old friends. After a few rounds of drinks, someone pushed the door open again. Several male classmates' eyes immediately lit up. "Olivia, you're really a rare guest." "Yes, beauty. Why are you here tonight?" Olivia's cheeks were slightly red as she said, "I was just having a talk next door. Heard that old classmates were having a party. So I came to join in the fun." As she spoke, her eyes fixed on me for a moment, then slowly moved away. My brother secretly nudged me. "James, Olivia is here for you, right?" I forced myself to look at her. Olivia was a bit taller than Sophia. Her figure was also better than Sophia's. I squinted at her for a while, then withdrew my gaze and shook my head, saying, "Impossible. We haven't been in touch for all these years." But my good brother ignored me. Directly called out to Olivia, "Olivia, let James send you back later. You've been drinking. It's not safe for you to take a taxi alone so late." Olivia's gaze passed over everyone, landed on my face. After about 2 seconds, I saw her nod. "Okay." My brother sat down with a smile. Whispered to me, "James, why can Sophia fall in love with someone else? You can start a second relationship too. Besides, with a beauty like Olivia, it's a waste not to date her. How do you know she won't date you?" My good brother grinned slyly. Continued to say to me, "Olivia's eyes were glued to you just now. Trust my experience, bro." When the party ended, I accompanied Olivia back to the hotel. When the taxi stopped downstairs at the hotel, she unbuckled her seatbelt. Thanked me. "Thank you for sending me back tonight." I turned my head to look at her and said, "You're welcome." I pushed the car door to get out. Suddenly, thinking of what Sophia said that day, I blurted out, "Won't you invite me up for a cup of tea?" Olivia's cheeks turned red, but still nodded silently. The moment the door was opened, I looked at Olivia again and said, "Olivia, aren't you afraid?" Olivia bit her lip, but her eyes were stubborn and firm as she said, "James, I'm not afraid." She kissed me in the elevator. I was stunned for a moment, but when I saw her face burning red, I lowered my head and responded to her kiss. When swiping open the door of the room, I called out to Olivia, "Olivia, if you regret it, it's not too late now." "Regret what?" She stared at me blankly. With a drunken smile in her eyes, she said, "Why didn't you ask when you kissed me just now?" For some reason, I saw a hint of unease and sadness in her eyes, and a kind of desperation like a last-ditch effort. It made my heart ache suddenly. I didn't say anything more. just gently hugged her. The scene was very charming. The night was also very passionate. Happy times are always short. On the 7th day of returning to this city, Sophia's little follower suddenly sent me a WeChat message. James, when will you come back to New York? I simply replied, I don't have any plans to go back for now. She asked me again. Everyone misses you a lot. Mia's birthday is in a few days. Come back and have a get-together. I replied impatiently. No need. Help me tell her that I'll send her a gift. The other side was silent for a long time. Then said, all right then. Take care of yourself. In the box, the girlfriend handed the phone to Sophia. Sophia? Look. Why don't you call James? He will definitely listen to you. Sophia coldly stared at the few lines of words on the screen. Suddenly stood up and said, fine if James doesn't come back. Sophia, don't worry. James must be feeling bad. Besides, he seems really angry this time. That's right. You've gone too far with that boy. Sophia slightly pouted, a bit dissatisfied, and said, I've already broken up with that guy. What else does he want? Sophia suddenly got angry. Shouted at her friends. No one is allowed to look for James again. Even if he's dead, don't look for him. The friends, seeing Sophia's emotional outburst, quickly comforted her. Okay. We won't look for him. You just got out of the hospital. Don't lose your temper. Only when James was around did you not have a stomachache. It's only been a few days since he left. And you've made yourself like this. With each word the girlfriend said, Sophia's face became darker. In the end, she directly rushed out of the door, walking all the way downstairs. With people coming and going, the cold wind blew in her face. But Sophia felt even more upset. James, you really have guts. 7 days. Not a single call or text message. As she spoke, she pulled my number into the blacklist. Said to herself, you'd better not come crying and begging me. Just as I put down my phone, Olivia's call came in. James, have steak with me tonight. I'll come to pick you up now. You'll definitely like it. Olivia's voice came through clearly. My tired body seemed to be soothed instantly. She took me to a French restaurant that had been open for many years. The store was old. The place wasn't big either. But the business was extremely good. The beautiful, dazzling, and exquisitely dressed Olivia really didn't fit in with this environment. I watched her carefully wipe the chair for me with a tissue. Then skillfully wipe the knife and fork with a tissue. And then pour me juice. Such a delicate girl. Actually doing these trivial things for me. I couldn't help but sigh. Olivia, your boyfriend is really lucky. Unlike me. I've been on again off again with Sophia for 7 years. Only at the beginning when we first got together did I enjoy the feeling of being cared for. Later, during the more than a year when I lived with Sophia after graduating from college, I was like a male nanny. Sophia has a weak stomach. So I learned to cook and make soup, taking care of her daily life personally. But now I realize, I loved her so much that I lost myself. I even forgot the truth that you should love yourself first before loving others. How could I expect her love to never fade? Olivia, while cutting the steak for me, looked up at me and asked, where did you hear that I have a boyfriend? I was stunned for a moment and then asked, wasn't there a boy always around you in college? It seemed that you two grew up together as childhood sweethearts. Olivia laughed and said, he's my uncle's son. We've been the closest since we were kids. I looked at her and then asked, then you haven't dated anyone all these years? Olivia looked at me quietly and gently, saying, no. James. Actually, all these years. I've been waiting for you. That night, we went back to the hotel together. After washing up, I carried her back to the big bed in the bedroom. Olivia looked at me nervously, holding onto my arm and not letting go. She murmured, James, I've been waiting for this day for a long time. I asked, are you afraid? Olivia shook her head with red eyes. James, I'm willing. She closed her eyes, hugged me tightly. Happy times weren't that short. On the night of Mia's birthday, our mutual friend with Sophia, the gift I bought was also delivered to her hands by a friend. Sophia was sitting on the sofa. Most of the red wine in front of her was gone. The gift for Mia was a bracelet from a high-end custom brand that Olivia and I chose together. Mia smiled and said, This bracelet is quite delicate. But then she turned her head and saw Sophia's glooming expression. So she didn't continue to praise it. Sophia stared at the bracelet. The brand's logo was very low-key and not obvious. But Sophia stared at it for a long time. For some reason, her eyes became moist. A tear welled up in her eyes. Mia quickly took out 2 tissues from her bag, handed them over and comforted her. Sophia, what's wrong with you? Just as the tissue was about to touch her cheek, Sophia smiled bitterly and blinked. Her eyelashes smoothed the tear away. She pushed the tissue away with a trembling hand. But at the last moment of pushing it away, her elbow lost control. Suddenly knocked over the empty wineglass in front of the table. The glass shattered on the floor tiles. The fragments splashed everywhere. A long bloodstain instantly appeared on the back of her hand. The box immediately became chaotic. What happened? Sophia? What's wrong with you? It's a serious injury. The blood won't stop flowing. We'd better go to the hospital quickly. Sophia sat there, motionless. That smile on her face remained unchanged. Bitter, yet still trying to maintain a bit of dignity. Sophia wiped the barely noticeable tear from the corner of her eye with her hand. But left a bloodstain. She seemed to be talking to herself. James has never bought anything from this brand. This wasn't bought by him himself. Her voice was very low, but hoarse and gloomy. Mia quickly smiled and said, "What's the big deal? Maybe he just passed by a store and bought it. After all, it's not your birthday. There's surely no need to pick carefully." "Yeah, Sophia. The place you hold in his heart is the most important. Everyone knows he cares about you a lot." Hearing this, Sophia shook her head and asked, "Does James care about me?" The noisy crowd strangely quieted down little by little. Mia tentatively asked, "Sophia, how about this? Should I call James?" Suddenly, Mia got brave and picked up her phone. Took a photo of Sophia's lacerated hand. Then directly sent it to James via WeChat. Sophia didn't stop her. Maybe it was because Mia was too quick. She didn't have time to stop her. Suddenly, it became quiet in the box. After about 10 seconds, Mia's phone rang suddenly. "Ah! I told you James loves and cares about you so much. Look, Sophia. It's James' call," Mia said happily. And everyone noticed that. Sophia's expression seemed to relax a bit. "Sophia, you answer." Mia handed the phone over. But Sophia didn't even look at it. She turned her face away. Mia cheerfully said, I'll answer. He. She deliberately turned on the speaker. When James' voice came through, Sophia's lips tightened instantly. James said, "Mia? What happened? Are you hurt?" "Ah, it's not me. It's Sophia's hand. You have no idea how badly she's hurt. It's terrifying. The blood just won't stop flowing." Mia rambled on for a while. But there was silence on the other end of the phone. "James? Are you listening? Maybe you should come back. Sophia refuses to go to the hospital. This continuous bleeding won't do." James' voice was steady and deep as he said, "Mia, listen to me." "Go ahead, James. I'm listening," Mia replied while winking at Sophia. But the next second, James' voice came out, "Don't tell me about her things anymore. And happy birthday, Mia." The smile on Mia's face disappeared instantly. Then the clear sound of the phone being hung up echoed. Mia was completely stunned. She held the phone as if it were a hot coal. She really wished she could slap herself unconscious. For no reason. Why did she meddle in this business? What kind of trouble did she stir up? It was completely silent in the box. Sophia said, "Are you all mute?" Everyone remained silent. Sophia laughed again. "Why aren't you talking anymore?" Emily, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly spoke up. "Sophia, don't be angry. The blood is flowing more now. Sophia, you know James' temper best. Actually, I've wanted to say this for a long time. What you did before was really hurtful. James is a man. Which man doesn't care about his face and self-esteem? Even if you don't like him anymore, you should break up amicably." Sophia sneered and said, "Who said I want to break up with him amicably? He's been with me for 7 years. I spent my prime youth with him. How many years does a woman's prime last? Why should he betray me because of a little thing? Can't we talk things out properly?" Emily looked at Sophia and continued. But have you ever thought about it? Isn't a man's youth also youth? How many 7-year periods does a person have? What if James really never comes back? In this world, nothing is impossible. Once the heart is broken and chilled, how hard is it to warm it up again? Sophia, don't do something you'll regret later. After Emily finished speaking, she didn't stay any longer. She picked up her bag and got up to leave. Just as I hung up the phone, Olivia hugged me from behind. She buried her head in my back and rubbed it gently, but didn't say anything. I couldn't help but laugh. She asked, "What's wrong? James, will you go back?" I asked in confusion. "Go back where?" Olivia replied, "Back to New York." I smiled and touched her head, saying, "I don't have any plans to go back for now. But maybe in the future. After all, I haven't done anything shameful. Why can't I go back? My home is still there." Olivia didn't say anything again. Then I realized what she meant and asked, "Are you asking if I'll get back together with Sophia?" Olivia immediately asked, "Will you?" I said definitely not. "Do you believe me?" Olivia lowered her eyes. She rubbed her face against my side face and said, "I want to believe." I tightly held her hand and continued, "Olivia, I'm a man. I care about my dignity. After all that's happened, how could I possibly get back together with her?" Olivia asked me seriously again, "Then do you still have feelings for her in your heart?" I thought about it carefully and said, "If I say I don't have any feelings at all, that's not realistic. After all, it's been so many years." Olivia suddenly bit me gently to show her dissatisfaction. I gently touched Olivia's face and continued, "But this feeling isn't one of reluctance or unwillingness. When we separated, I didn't feel much pain or suffering. So, maybe I stopped loving her a long time ago. Maybe from the moment she started being absent-minded about this relationship, I was already prepared to break up." Olivia suddenly said, "I won't." I looked at her in confusion. "What?" she said with a serious look. "I won't be absent-minded. I won't fall in love with someone new at the sight of them." Olivia hugged me tighter and tighter. Finally, she looked up and kissed me, saying, "James, be with me." But I didn't respond to her kiss. In the end, I gently pushed her away. Looking at her, I said, "Olivia, I'm sorry." She looked up at me, her eyes a bit red, and asked, "Why are you saying sorry?" I turned my head to avoid her gaze and said, "It's my own problem. I don't want to talk about relationships anymore." Olivia's voice was trembling as she asked, "Then what were these days between us? James, what do you take me for? A prostitute?" I didn't dare to look up at her, afraid that I might not be able to hide my emotions. Olivia's eyes were completely red. She let go of her hand and slowly took a step back. She seemed to be smiling, but the smile was broken. "James, you can't treat me like this. Olivia." She turned around, picked up her coat and walked outside. I instinctively took a step forward, but then stopped. Olivia walked all the way to the door. The moment she held the doorknob, she suddenly looked back at me. She even gave me a comforting smile. "James, I've waited for you for 7 years. I don't mind waiting for another 7 years." I sighed and said, "Sorry. I really can't give you any promises." Olivia left. I felt completely drained. I slowly sat down on the sofa. I felt an indescribable sadness in my heart. Olivia is so good and pure. Compared to her, I'm so dirty. It even seems that, just thinking about possessing her, feels like I'm defiling her. Does a man like me deserve such a perfect girl? Deserve to have whole-hearted love? These 7 years, I've been tortured by Sophia. I no longer believe that I can have such good fortune. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning. Olivia drove back to the hotel where James was staying. She got out of the car, but didn't go in. Instead, she leaned against the car body, quietly looking up. Countless windows were lit. She couldn't find which one was James, but she knew he was there. Knew he was in Miami, in the same city as her. Knew that as long as she walked in, 10 minutes later, she could see James. And that seemed to bring joy and satisfaction. In fact, it took her less than 2 days to figure it out. She easily convinced herself. James had just ended a relationship. It was normal that he didn't want to date again. It was even more normal that James was now disappointed and resistant to women, dating, and even marriage. Maybe she was too hasty. If he felt that keeping this relationship for now would make him feel relaxed and comfortable. She actually didn't mind not having a formal status. The night before I was going to leave, I invited my brother Mark to drink. He asked, "How's it going with Olivia?" Seeing that I didn't speak, my brother grinned and said, "No need to say. I understand, bro. When will you invite me to your wedding? It's so hard to wait for this wedding drink. Among our group of guys, you're the only one who's not married yet." I looked at him, shook my head helplessly and said, "I don't want to delay her. I don't want to date or get married." My good brother got angry when he heard this and said, "James, are you talking nonsense?" I shook my head and said, "I just think this is irresponsible to her. I feel like I've lost the ability to love someone." He suddenly slapped me hard on the head, angrily said to me, "James, when you sent her back to the hotel, why didn't you say you didn't want to? Olivia has waited for you for 7 years. 7 years, man. You spent one night with her. And now you're acting affectionate after the fact. You call this being responsible? I know the principle of benefiting from others' efforts. But there's no reason for you to torment the new one because of what the ex did. James, I'm scolding you for your own good. A brother won't harm you. I know you might just be temporarily confused, unable to think rationally about relationships. Sophia wronged you. But if you do this, you're wronging Olivia. You're just transferring the harm done to you to someone else. Is this fair to Olivia?" I looked at him blankly. The confusion after the breakup actually dissipated in his scolding words. I was stunned. How on earth did I get into this dead end? Why did I think this was being responsible to Olivia? How could I have such an idea? What on earth was I thinking these days? Mark continued. "You've been brainwashed by Sophia for 7 years. You think you don't deserve true love and happiness." Maybe he was right. Because of the constant worrying about losing and the on-again, off-again relationship. The resulting pain and entanglement. I subconsciously feared establishing long-term relationships with others. This psychological emotion gradually overwhelmed my other rational thinking abilities, making me develop a distorted value system. He slapped me hard on the back again, trying to wake me up. "James, do you know how outstanding you are? To be honest, this sounds cheesy usually. But since we've drunk a lot today, let's talk straight. Since college, you've won scholarships every year. Although we don't talk about it usually. Which of our roommates doesn't admire you? After graduation, you were bold and hard-working. While we were still looking for jobs, you had already started your own company. Although you were a bit love-struck, learning to cook and make porridge for a heartless woman. But to be fair, a man like you is very popular in the market. That fool will definitely regret breaking up with you. In her whole life, she'll never be able to get over losing you. Now call Olivia immediately. And cancel your plane ticket. Don't think I don't know you want to run away again." I looked at Mark and said, "But you said, will Olivia and I end up like that too?" Mark blurted out, "No." I asked in confusion. "Why?" Mark continued, "Because I believe that a girl who sticks to her original heart, sincere and innocent, after getting the person she likes, will never be stupid enough to lose him." "Do you think she's that stupid woman Sophia?" I shook my head and said, "Of course she's not Sophia." Mark said, "So, call her now. You definitely can't imagine how happy she'll be." I thought Olivia would be happy. But I never expected that a wealthy young lady who grew up in comfort would be as happy as a child when she received my call. Mark looked at me proudly and said, "How about it? Are you happy?" I nodded and said, "It seems like you said I was really a bit stupid a few days ago." Mark said proudly, "You see? You're happy. And Olivia is even happier. That's it." He said this and then couldn't help laughing. Now just thinking about how unhappy Sophia will be in the future, I feel so satisfied. I smiled faintly and said, "Not necessarily. Sophia might already have someone new by her side. Let's not mention her anymore." At this moment, I could actually say this without any waves in my heart. It seemed that that person really had nothing to do with me anymore. When Olivia's car arrived downstairs, I just came out of the bar. She stood in the night wind, smiling at me. I stopped and looked at her. To be honest, Olivia was really good looking. Everything about her was to my taste. Sophia could cheat, step on two boats without breaking up, and move on seamlessly without any psychological burden. Then what's wrong with me falling in love wholeheartedly with someone new after the breakup? I walked towards Olivia. She also walked quickly towards me. With people coming and going, Olivia and I kissed as if no one else was around. Her heart was beating so fast. I touched the back of her neck. It was burning hot. I asked nervously, "Olivia, are you having a fever?" She leaned her forehead against my mouth, panting softly. "James, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm like this whenever I touch you." I chuckled, lowered my head and kissed her. "Maybe it'll be okay after touching more." Olivia's ears became even redder and hotter. After a while, she whispered, "James, what am I to you now?" I deliberately teased her, smiling and saying, "What do you think?" Olivia shook her head and asked, "A mistress or a girlfriend?" After asking, she didn't wait for my answer. She buried her face in my chest and said softly, "Forget it. Don't answer. I don't want to know now." My hand gently encircled her waist, pulling her closer to me. I said seriously to Olivia, "Do you really not want to know? You're my girlfriend." Sophia's car stopped at the entrance of an alley. She got out of the car, walked into the depths of the alley on foot. There lived an old tailor. His ancestors had been tailors for the French royal family. Now that he was old, he had long since stopped taking customers. But Sophia managed to invite this old man through many connections. The wedding dress that James had burned was sent to this old master half a month ago. Today, it was almost completely repaired. As she walked, she thought, what Mia said a few days ago was right. Not only women yearn for marriage, men also long to marry the girl they love. She had been with James for 7 years, but she had never thought of getting married. She never expected that. James had once thought of proposing to her. She had indeed gone too far these days. But she had only agreed to that male college student's pursuit on a whim. Nothing had actually happened. After getting in touch with him, she found it boring. She still had James in her heart. So she broke up with him immediately. After 7 years of being together, she was really tired. He was such a dull person. He never provided any emotional value. He always just did things quietly and accompanied her silently. But some people are like colorless and odorless air. Only when you lose them do you realize how important they are. These days without James, she couldn't get excited about anything. When she was having a party with her girlfriends, she was thinking about him all the time. Especially when she came back late. James would definitely look for her everywhere. Call her girlfriends one by one to confirm her safety. And persuade her to go home quickly. If he couldn't persuade her, no matter how late it was, he would drive and pretend to be angry. Drag her out of the bar and take her home. There was always a bowl of hangover soup at home late at night. He would hold her in his arms, feed her spoon by spoon, gently stroke her cheek. His eyes were full of tenderness and love. At that time, all this always made her feel irritated. But now, she misses it incredibly. Sophia thought, when James comes back this time, she would propose to him instead. In fact, she had known for a long time how much James wanted to marry her. The old master's craftsmanship was really good. The wedding dress had been repaired to look almost exactly the same as the original. Sophia paid the money. As she was leaving, her phone suddenly rang. She felt inexplicably nervous. It was not until she saw Mia's name flashing on the screen that her wildly beating heart gradually calmed down. "Sophia, there's something I thought about and decided I should tell you. Don't be hasty when you hear it. This thing is uncertain. Maybe it's just rumors from others." Sophia asked in confusion. "What exactly is it?" Mia suddenly felt a bit too to say. How could it turn out like this? Why did James have to be rumored with anyone but Olivia? Olivia was the one Sophia had the most conflicts with over the years. Especially 2 years ago because of a project. Both Sophia and Olivia were top fashion designers in the industry. They competed on the same stage just to win the position of the designer for the Paris fashion show. Sophia was full of confidence at first. But in the end, Olivia won easily. And without much effort. That was the first time she felt that something she was determined to get could be snatched away from her hands. So, the relationship between the two of them became extremely tense. Mia said cautiously, "Don't be angry when I say this. It's all just what I've heard. There's no real evidence yet. It's just that some people saw James in Miami." Sophia's fingers gripping the phone suddenly tightened. But she managed to ask calmly, "What about him being in Miami?" Mia continued, "James seems to be with Olivia. Of course, it could just be having a meal. There might be nothing else." At this moment, Sophia's heart was in a panic. She could only pretend to be calm and reply, "I see. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up first." Sophia hung up the phone. She carried the big paper bag. The paper bag containing the wedding dress James bought. Step by step, she walked in the cold wind of early winter in New York. She walked all the way to the entrance of the alley. To the side of the car. Sophia suddenly stopped. A faint, sarcastic smile slowly emerged on her delicate face. The next moment, the exquisite paper bag in her hand was thrown into the trash can without hesitation. 2 months after James left, Sophia sent him a WeChat message. The message was successfully sent. But there was no response. The message said, "I'm planning to sell the apartment. What should I do with your things?" Maybe she forgot that James had left her a note, telling her to deal with everything here as she liked. Maybe she just did it on purpose, looking for an excuse to send him a message. What Sophia might be thinking was that this was a step she took the initiative to offer James. If he was smart, he should know to come down the steps. Although she seemed to have a bad temper, she was actually quite easy to please. James never replied. Naturally, the apartment was not sold. James' clothes and all his previous items were still there as they were. As if he had never left. Sophia would always come here late at night. Then lie on James' bed. Insomniac until dawn was almost breaking. In the 3rd month after James left, it was still the same late night. When the clock was almost pointing to 12, Sophia dialed James' phone number. In college, James was a very honest and simple boy. Although his family was ordinary, he didn't have to worry about food and clothing. His parents loved him very much. But they were also very strict with him. It was not until the autumn of his graduation year that James started living with her. She still remembered that night. Both of them were so nervous that their whole bodies were shaking. At the end of making love, James held her in his arms. With a serious look on his face, he said, "Sophia, I will never let you down. We'll be together for a lifetime. I'll treat you well. Take good care of you. Love you forever. Sophia, we'll be together forever." But that James who thought he would be with the girl he loved forever had been lost by her for a long time. So long that she could hardly remember. What kind of expression James had when they broke up for the last time? Did he nod with a smile? Or did his eyes turn red? The phone rang for a long time. Just when she thought James wouldn't answer, the phone was answered. At that moment, in fact, she wanted to say, "James, come back." But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "James, come back when you've had enough fun." Her ridiculously stupid words were interrupted by a woman's gentle voice. That laugh was like a cold, hard ice crashing down. Sophia felt as if her whole body was wrapped in ice. Unable to move. The voice on the other end of the phone continued. "Sophia, you should apologize early. Otherwise, he'll be taken away." Sophia's eyes turned red, and she gritted her teeth as she pronounced the name. "Olivia." At this moment, Olivia, who was hugging me, smiled and said, "That's right, it's me." Sophia tightly held the phone. Her voice trembling. She shouted, "Olivia, where is James? Let him answer the phone." Her emotions fluctuated violently. Tears kept falling, one drop after another, finally streaming down in a continuous stream. With every word she said, her tears became more uncontrollable. She swallowed the tears that flowed down to the corner of her mouth. But she still had to say, "Let him answer the phone. Let him answer the phone." Olivia lowered her head, gently kissed the sleeping man beside her, and said provocatively, "He can't answer. James is exhausted tonight and just fell asleep. If you have something to say, I'll wake him up with a kiss first." Sophia's voice suddenly stopped. Olivia hung up the phone and turned it off casually. She lay down and gently hugged the sleeping person. In his sleep, James also hugged her tightly. Actually, I had thought about what it would be like to meet Sophia again. She came from a wealthy family and was full of pride. Our breakup was peaceful. If we really met one day, either she would ignore me, or we could nod and greet each other. After all, my parents and relatives were in New York. And Sophia and I had some mutual friends. It was impossible that we would never have any contact in our lives. But I never expected that such a high and mighty wealthy young lady, who was always pampered, would also have such a haggard and helpless moment. At that time, I was in a very good mood and in excellent condition. Wearing a black cashmere coat that was a couple style with Olivia's. I was walking out of the revolving door with her in my arms, laughing and chatting. Then, I saw Sophia getting out of the car. I was stunned for a moment and stopped in my tracks. Olivia's warm fingers gently held my hand. At this moment, Sophia's dress was a bit wrinkled, and her makeup was smeared. There was an unconcealable helplessness on her face, and her eyes were full of regret as she looked at me. People were coming and going around us. The music fountain not far away was playing cheerful music. This scene was like a slow motion shot in a movie. But I wasn't a bystander. I was one of the protagonists caught off guard. Olivia subconsciously tugged at my sleeve. Sophia's expression gradually calmed down. She called my name gently, just like in the passionate days before. James. I stood still. The cheerful music was still echoing in my ears. But for some reason, there was an indescribable sadness in my heart. Maybe it was for the James who heard those unbearable words that night. Maybe it was for the James who was informed of the breakup on the spot. Or maybe it was for the James who had truly loved for 7 years, but let go completely in just 7 days. Sophia didn't look at Olivia from beginning to end. Her eyes were fixed on my face. And she called me with extreme tenderness. James. James. Come back to New York with me. I couldn't even remember how long it had been since Sophia had looked at me like this before our breakup. Sophia stopped about 1 meter in front of me. She said firmly, James, we'll get married when we go back. From now on, we'll live a good life. Okay? She said it so seriously that I almost thought that the Sophia who said she had fallen in love with someone else not long ago was just my imagination. But it was too late. Sophia, my broken heart can't be put back together. And the new heart that grew in the swamp already belongs to someone else. I gently shook my head and said, Sophia, you should go. She said nervously, James, I didn't touch that guy. I broke up with him in less than 3 days. I've had the wedding dress you bought repaired by an old master. And our matching rings, I've kept them well. James, I've also customized a diamond ring. I'm serious. Sophia's eyes were getting redder and redder. And her voice was faintly trembling. She held the delicate diamond ring box in her hands and presented it to me like a treasure. The eagerness and hope in her eyes were extremely cautious. Looking at her like this, I couldn't deny that I still felt sad. But now it was just this bit of sadness. I replied calmly, Sophia, I already have a girlfriend. I tightly held Olivia's hand and hugged her in my arms. The color seemed to disappear from Sophia's face in an instant. Her gaze slowly slid down, finally stopping on the fingers that Olivia and I were holding. We were wearing a pair of matching rings on our middle fingers. Just like I and she used to be. She asked in disbelief. James, are you serious? I took a deep breath, turned my head to look at Olivia, and then nodded firmly. Yes, I'm serious. Sophia suddenly let out a low laugh. She murmured to herself, Do you think Olivia is serious about you? How much sincerity do you think Olivia really has? 2 years ago, she fought me tooth and nail for a designer position. Now she's clinging to you again. James, don't you think there's some ulterior motive in this? Dare Olivia say straightforwardly that she's not with you just to make me look bad? James, you're still so naive. We were together for 7 years. So many things happened between us. Do you think Olivia really doesn't mind at all? Do you think she can really end up with you and love you until old age? Aren't you afraid that being with Olivia will just end up like another 7-year relationship with me? The cheerful music stopped at some point. Sophia's voice also stopped. First, there was a moment of emptiness in my ears. Then there was a faint sound of something breaking. After that sound, there was an indescribable sense of relief. You see? I didn't even have that last bit of sadness left. It's just a pity that. Why do people always have some things to regret in their lives? Before today, I didn't regret loving Sophia. Whether it was good or bad. After all, it was all my experience. But at this moment, I couldn't help but regret deeply. Why didn't I realize in 7 years that Sophia actually never respected me in her heart? Yes, I'm just an ordinary person. But she's a wealthy young lady. In my eyes, we were in a serious relationship. But perhaps she just regarded me as a playmate. Olivia looked at me with sad eyes. My face was a bit pale. But I still smiled and shook my head at her, saying, "I'm okay." Olivia stared at me for a while. Then suddenly kissed me hard and said, "James, I will see through what I've decided. I've never regretted anything. But today I really regret it. I regret why I was so timid back then. Letting you be tormented by her for so long. Sophia, you don't deserve James' love and affection for you in these 7 years." Maybe this sentence completely enraged Sophia. She had never lost her mind like this before. Sophia blurted out, "What about you, Olivia? You go for a man who was with me for 7 years. What right do you have to stand in front of me and talk big? What do you like about him? Do you really like James? Or do you just like the fact that he's my boyfriend, James?" Olivia slapped Sophia hard across the face. And Sophia, who was not one to take a loss, immediately raised her hand to slap back. But I grabbed Sophia's wrist in an instant. Sophia's face turned. She said angrily to me, "James, you saw it. It was Olivia who hit me first." I replied calmly, "Yes, she was the one who started it. Sophia, I apologize to you on Olivia's behalf." I let go of my hand and firmly protected Olivia behind me. Tears rolled down Sophia's eyes drop by drop, and she said, "James, you're protecting her like this. She hit me first." I asked calmly, "So what do you want to do about it?" Sophia pointed to her face and said, "James, I'm hurt. It really hurts." I took a look and said calmly, "Then I'll call an ambulance for you. We'll cover all the expenses." She cried and said to me, "James, you know that's not what I want." Sophia tried to pull me, but I dodged. All the emotions that Sophia had been holding back on her face shattered. The look in her eyes as she looked at me was full of sadness. But in my heart, there was really no more waves. Sophia didn't say anything more. The setting sun quietly lengthened her figure. Maybe it was when James called out Olivia's name. Maybe it was when James grabbed her wrist at the first moment to prevent her from hitting Olivia back, that she finally realized clearly that James really didn't love her anymore. Emily's question that day actually came true. James wouldn't come back to her side. She thought she could easily let go of the 7-year relationship. She thought she was the one in control of this relationship. She thought she would always be the winner. But at this moment, she realized that it was she who couldn't let go. James was the string that held the kite. Once the string broke, the kite lost its direction and could never go home again. I watched Sophia turn around and walk towards the car. Watched her lonely figure disappear. The sun at dusk was suddenly swallowed by the horizon. The sky turned into a light rose blue. Sophia's car gradually drove away. I seemed to see the 7 years from when I was 17 to 24. Whizzing away with that car. Gone without a trace. I knew that. From this day on, the name Sophia was like every ordinary name in the world. I wouldn't deliberately forget it, but I would never actively think of it again. Olivia gently took my arm and called, "James." I turned my head and looked down at her, saying gently, "Let's go. Let's go home." The night I proposed to Olivia, I drank a lot of wine. Olivia was also drunk. She held me and said a lot of things. But the only 2 simple sentences I seem to remember were, "James, we'll never have such a 7-year period. James, we'll never break up." At the moment when everyone makes a vow, they must really believe it. But later, when they break the vow, they wonder how anyone could believe such a thing. But I was willing to believe Olivia. In fact, I believed in myself. I believed that true love would not be let down at least once. The day Olivia and I got engaged, we received a gift sent from New York. It was a ring that Sophia had given me before. There was also a card in the box. The handwriting on it was Sophia's. She said, "James, I'll keep that wedding dress waiting for you to come back. Olivia was beside me and saw the card too. She said a bit jealously, "Unfortunately, I won't give her a chance." But that night, the ring disappeared without a trace. And I no longer cared about such unimportant things. In the 3rd year of our marriage, Olivia gave birth to our son, Robert. Shortly after the baby was born, Sophia sent a lot of expensive gifts. I asked Olivia for her opinion. She said, "Our son doesn't lack these. Let's donate them to the welfare home. This person is at an age where she should be married, but she isn't. She keeps eyeing other people's husbands and children every day. She's just asking for it." I couldn't help but laugh. Why do you care about other people's business? For some reason, Olivia became happy. Right in front of all the servants and nannies in the room. She grabbed my arm and shook it, saying, "James, what you said just now sounded so nice. Say it again, okay?" I deliberately teased her. "What did I say?" Olivia pouted and said, "That sentence you just said, why do you care about other people's business?" I thought she was so cute. So I said it again. Why do you care about other people's business? The most important thing is that we live our own lives well. After she said this, I picked her up and placed her on my lap. I kissed her slightly red ear and whispered softly in her ear, "Honey, our son is 2 months old. Let's go to bed early tonight." Sophia's story epilogue. When James' son was 3 years old, the 3-member family returned to New York to visit relatives. They stayed for a few months. James and I had quite a few mutual friends. They were having parties almost every day. Naturally, I wouldn't attend. But after each party, I still couldn't help asking about news of him. They said that James had gone to study in Germany for 2 years after getting married. During those 2 years, Olivia traveled back and forth between Miami and Germany, just to spend more time with James. Later, Olivia returned to Miami and founded her own company. She achieved some success. Olivia unconditionally supported all of his decisions and choices. She always tried her best to be by his side, accompanying him in his struggles without complaint. She could have been a pampered lady, but she didn't choose that. James became more and more outstanding. Olivia became more and more beautiful. But it wasn't just about her looks. Their relationship grew better and better. Their child was incredibly cute and looked a lot like James when he was a kid. In fact, he never knew that. I still had a photo of him when he was 5 in my wallet. New York is so big, yet the social circle is so small. But James and I never ran into each other even once. One noon, by chance, I saw their child, Robert, in a buffet restaurant. He was hiding behind a rockery, secretly eating a box of ice cream. He looked like a cute little squirrel, his mouth stuffed full. My steps stopped uncontrollably. I just stared at him, reluctant to look away. After a while, I heard James calling his name. He heard it too. His eyes widened in fear. He held the ice cream box, not knowing what to do. I walked over as if possessed. I squatted down and asked softly, "Are you afraid that Daddy will find out you're sneaking ice cream?" He nodded. His big eyes were rolling around, looking very smart. I then asked, "Shall Auntie help you hide?" He hesitated a bit. He looked at me for a long time, as if making sure I wasn't a bad person. Then he nodded again. I picked him up. He was so small, so well behaved and soft. He lay on my chest. His little hands played with the accessories on my dress. Suddenly, he said in a babyish voice, "Auntie, do you know me?" My throat seemed to be blocked by something. It felt bitter. And everything in front of me gradually became blurred. If time could go back to that year, that night, I wouldn't let all that happen. James would be my husband. We would get married in New York. I would have children for him. I raised my face, forced back my tears, and smiled at him, saying, "Yes, Auntie knows you." He hugged me with his soft little hands and said, "Then do you know my name? I'll secretly tell you. My nickname is Robert. I'm chubby, so my nickname is Robert." I looked at the little guy gently and said, "Is that so? That's really a nice name." I kissed his soft and tender little face and continued, "Okay. We can't hide for too long. Otherwise, Mommy will worry." He nodded obediently and said, "Then I'll take one more bite of ice cream. Just one bite." He took a big bite. then smiled at me slyly like a kitten. I stroked his hair and said, "Go find your daddy now." I watched him walk away. It was like having a dream that was out of my reach. It was long and beautiful, like soft sand slipping through my fingers, vanishing into the wind. I didn't look at James a second time. I was afraid I would break down and cry uncontrollably in the crowded hall. James wouldn't care about anything related to me. But Olivia must think I'm ridiculous. Yes. My first half of life was so absurd. So laughable. And for the rest of my life, even this absurdity and laughability have become a delusion.